Hi guys, I'm Elliot Newstead, the Student Recruitment Manager at the University of Leicester. I've got a team of 9 student recruitment and outreach staff that sort of fit under me, covering pre-16, post-16, and mature and postgraduate recruitment across the UK and EU, which has been exciting over the last few weeks and months. I also have a slightly different hat on as well, so I've got a voluntary role within Helloa, of our Helloa and UCAS events working group chair, which I started in January of this year, which again has been pretty good timing in terms of my the busyness of my workload. I've been at Leicester for just over 7 years now, starting from a student recruitment officer role and kind of stumbling into various jobs, and I've got my current role for about 3 years.
Okay, that's fantastic. Well, Elliot, listen, thank you ever so much for joining us today. As you know, we're running a series of called the Datafiltr Interviews, where I'm really talking to senior staff at predominantly who work within our customer base. These are obviously very weird times, shall we say?
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've always professed through the platform is, you know, how can universities work more collaboratively to help save time, etc. Firstly, how's that transition been for yourself? And secondly, how do you feel the transition's been for what you appear to have quite a large team? So how are you sort of managing those communications?
Yeah, so I guess if we go back to when the kind of transition started, it was quite a quick transition from knowing it was kind of coming for a while in terms of needing to kind of probably think about working from home, to being given about 3 days to kind of up the team and leave the office as the university was kind of closing the campus. So we had to think quite quickly. Thankfully, I think given the role and the roles that the team currently have, they're kind of used to working away from the office a lot. No, maybe not working at their house, but working away from the office and kind of using technology to help them along the way. We were able to adapt quite quickly then for that, I think. The team kind of raided the office for furniture and monitors and desk equipment, I guess, but with the main aim, and one of the things I said to them was I want them to feel as comfortable as they can do at home. And no matter how we could do that, I think one of the easiest ways of doing so was making them feel like they're in the office. So taking whatever they needed, having as near to the same setup, obviously, but in their kitchen or lounge or study or whatever it might be. We already used Microsoft Teams. So that, again, we're not that long using it, but we've been using it for a few months. So again, the team are kind of fairly accustomed to the new world of different tech and using, not reliant on the university kind of VPN or university hard drive for the file sharing and saving and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think most of the benefits of it, I think one thing I found is it makes you think a bit more about what you do as a team. So it makes you think, how can we best make use of our time, rather than kind of thinking of higher education and UCAS and stuff as a cycle, which it obviously still is, but it makes you think a little bit more about, okay, so we're at this point, what is it that we're offering, rather than just getting stuck in a rut's the wrong word, but a cycle of, oh, we did this and it works, and it's the UCAS season, it's talks, it's workshops, it's visiting schools, it's going to fairs. Now that isn't a thing, for a while anyway. We need to think more carefully about what we do and how we communicate that, rather than just relying on our usual channels. It's actually making most of our relationships with schools.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt there. So how have you actually physically gone about that process? That's quite interesting, because you're saying it's giving you more time to think. Is that, do you do this in a collaborative way within the team, or do the ideas have to come from yourself and then you're directing people, or?
No, thankfully, the team have been really, really good and really, really proactive in thinking of new ideas, but also along with the idea, thinking how that would be implemented, not just going, we could do this, whatever X might be.
Yeah.
Actually thinking, okay, so if we are going to do online webinars for the schools, what do we need to get in place? What do we need to think about? Who are our key partners and who are our key channels of communication? which has been good for my headspace, because there's been a lot of obviously kind of management activity and data and people wanting trackers and weekly updates and daily updates on stuff, which is, it's fine, that's my job. But having the team in place to kind of hit the ground running, and actually that, from what I've seen across the sector, I've been really, really proud of my team, particularly as I think we're one of those that adapted probably the quickest, which I think is a testament to their hard work, their proactivity, and their drive, really.
Yeah, no, I was very keen to have the interview with yourself because I've been following your activity on LinkedIn from probably about the beginning of March, and it sounds as though you've achieved a lot, which is great. So what would you say? What are the lessons you may have learned sort of so far? Would you say in terms of the environment?
Good question. One of the main lessons is you can get interrupted quite quickly. But other lessons, I think, making the most of time on calls is one. We were very quick to go sort of gung-ho with video calls and meeting after meeting after meeting, but I think slowly that is reducing down. And one of the lessons I think we're all learning is we don't need meetings for everything, which I think, going back to kind of standard office life, that's again quite an easy trap to fall into. Let's just have a meeting, let's do this, let's do that. But you can get a lot more stuff done by Teams chat or a 5-minute phone call as opposed to an hour scheduled meeting. So far, I think one of the other lessons I've learned is that not everything needs to take as long as it used to take. The challenging circumstances we're in now, I think, have made people realise across the institution, including me, that actually there are some decisions that can be made very, very quickly by an individual or a couple of individuals, which doesn't have to take a week or be kind of death by committee to get resolved. Which I think hopefully will continue to be a lesson that we learn and carry on through, even if we do go back to kind of standard office life. I'd hope that then that doesn't mean reverting back to meeting for meeting's sake and thousands of loopholes to jump through to get even the most basic things sorted. Not a negative lesson I've learned, but I think one thing that we as an institution, but probably a sector, I'd imagine, and I've heard this quite a lot, is that it has definitely resulted in a lot more email. And I thought email was a lot already, but now we're not all in the same office. Emails are intense. So I don't quite know what the lesson is, but there's a lesson to be learned in there somewhere about internal communication and maximizing that. I think that using other things that aren't email. So we've learned how to use video calls, which no one really ever used before at the university, which seems quite antiquated. But I think thinking about how we replicate back and forth email chat is probably something that we need to carry on learning.
It's a very interesting point, and there are obviously tools. This is where technology may start playing a much more important role. We use Slack as our internal communication, and we find that excellent. I'm not familiar with Teams, but I understand it has much of the same sort of functionality. So that hopefully might be the way forward. So obviously your team at the moment are struggling to visit schools or colleges as nowhere's open. As we speak today, we've got little idea as to when life might get back to normal. There's talk of June. I personally think that it's probably more likely to be September. You and I would normally meet around this time of year at one of the UCAS exhibitions and say hello and catch up. So what plans or strategies have you already thought about plans and strategies should everything reopen in September? And what do you think the impact is going to be if a lot of the events that were due to happen now are shifted to that period? How do you think you're going to cope?
Yeah, it's another good question. I think in terms of planning, one of the things, again, kind of slowly reverting back to the previous question about lessons learned, one of the things we've really, really learned is students do adapt well to kind of online content. That's where they're used to seeing stuff. So actually being able to replicate quite a lot of our activity to pretty much the same standard in terms of delivery of talks and workshops and taster days and things like that, but in an online world has been has been good, and it's something I'd want the team to continue doing, even if we do go back to the same sort of standard office life of going out and visiting schools. So I don't want us to lose that. So in terms of our planning, we are now thinking, okay, so once we get back to that stage, yes, we will still want to go and visit schools, but actually by having maybe a regular calendar of webinars or live chats or things around the topics we deliver normally face to face, that opens out and widens our reach straight away to maybe schools that we couldn't have or wouldn't have the time to visit previously, that schools we'd like to go and work with, or ones that maybe wouldn't quite fit our targeting criteria to kind of warrant a 2.5 hour drive to deliver a talk. Now we can still contact them and invite them to watch the talk, but it's from the comfort of their own classrooms. And that's the kind of thing I'm not quite sure how it will work. So at the moment, obviously students would tune in from, most of them from their homes to any weekly webinars we're going to be doing. But actually once it goes back to a classroom environment, I'm not sure how receptive. I think they will be receptive, but I'm not sure how receptive schools will be to plonking their 30 kids or 60 kids in front of a screen and watching a webinar, not the live version of someone presenting. So I guess that's a challenge we'll have to think about. But currently we're planning, we'd redone our schools targeting pre kind of COVID and working from home anyway. So we're looking at rolling that out. And I'm not seeing any reason to change that. That's not really based on anything we've learned over the last few weeks anyway. But also continually to be proactive. I think one of the main, it's not really a strategy or a plan, but it's a mindset I want to kind of instill in the team, and I think is instilled, is just to always be listening to the market. Always think about what is it that teachers, advisors, students, parents, whoever are wanting, and not just what do we want to get across. Because again, going back to the lessons learned question, one of the main things I found, particularly in the first, going back to the end of kind of March, when it was all very, very different schools, which obviously shut very quickly. It was very uncertain. The exams cancelled, notification came out. Our approach was very, very quick to be very open, very honest, very transparent, be reassuring in our communication, in our tone. And that the feedback we got was amazing. It was great from schools. The appreciativeness is not even a word of them in terms of how we were getting our message across. Even though our message was, we're not really sure what's happening, to be honest, but that's fine. And we will keep you in touch, and we'll run web chats for you, etc. So thinking about our strategies and planning for the future, there's no reason we need to change that kind of approach. It might mean that we drop some of the standard things we normally offer, but that's fine. That's kind of how a product will go in terms of its life cycle, so that's okay. It might mean new stuff that we never thought we'd end up delivering comes our way. Again, that's okay. I don't think we should get stuck in no, we will only go to UCAS fairs in this time of year. If they move, we won't go to them. Like, well, why? I don't know. I think flexibility has been something that has been key recently. So there's no reason to go, not to lose that in a world that might revert back to kind of normality in, I don't know, 6 months or so.
I hope so, although none of us know. So you raised quite a good point there, and obviously we're now sort of touching vaguely upon the UCAS events, etc. There was a recent article I noticed on Wonky where someone was putting forward their own views about what we might ascertain from the current situation, and sort of have put together some suggestions around what might happen post-COVID. And one of those things was perhaps refocusing on, as we mentioned earlier, the cycle, so to speak. UCAS are obviously going to have to move events. So that moves me quite nicely into my last question, which is, what are your own views? And you might sort of have a Leicester and a lower hat on here about how the sector can work more collaboratively to ensure that the schools and students and the universities sort of are all getting what they hope to get out of the relationships they're trying to build.
Mm-hmm. Well, so a lot of that probably stems back to the work that Helloa members do. Well, obviously organisations, but with Helloa do. Going back to your point earlier about using Slack, so we've as an organisation we've launched a Helloa Slack account.
Oh, have you?
3 or 4 weeks ago. Again, just aimed at kind of sharing best practice across different threads and everything like that, which has been really good to see. People have been pretty open, pretty honest, pretty clear on what's working, maybe what's not working, the use of other new technology and what's best for kind of what scheme or what platform you want to get something across with. So that's been really, really good. And I think actually something that, well, again, we'll just carry on, because Hello members were quite good at that anyway, face-to-face or at meetings and things like that. I think it's just now an additional tech dimension to that. In terms of other collaboration, I think, well, some of it will probably be forced with things like the moratorium at the moment around offers. I think that's the expectation will be universities maybe not working to actually together, but working as a sector to go, okay, so how do we support students, but also don't disadvantage students, don't pressure students as well. I think that's one of the things that's come out of the kind of extensions to the moratoriums and things like that. And again, some of it goes back to what I was saying earlier about using what we're learning to then develop new stuff. We might not be sure what that is at the moment. And it might be that virtual exhibitions are a thing that crop out of that, and actually using the sector expertise to help, to help kind of form what they should look like, or form how they should run, or form how they should be promoted, I think is very, very key. There's probably thousands of years of expertise of going to the big exhibitions physically. Yeah. So I think those organizations that are going to be hosting those or thinking about hosting those would be kind of foolish not to use the expertise, and people like UCAS or other organizations, UK University Search, etc., I'm sure are doing so, and with my Hello and UCAS hat on, I know are doing so. But again, this is probably something where Hello as an organization, and speaking for Hello, we've been good at getting the message out about all the work Hello members and organizations within as Hello members are doing. I still think there's probably a few other things we could do in terms of just working with people like Wonky and the OFS, but again, I know our partnerships team within Hello are doing that already. So with my Leicester hat back on, I think a lot of the collaboration will probably come at a younger age, and actually really focusing on particularly those students, maybe year 10 and 11 at the moment, and maybe year 9 as well, in terms of the uncertainty around GCSEs, and particularly those that are affected this year and then next year potentially. And actually thinking, how do we, whether it's locally or whether it's nationally, work with our compatriots to go, okay, so we've, rather than all delivering the same type of activity and it being quite an intimidating amount of activity to look into, say, right, we are 3 institutions locally, let's do this to support these key cohorts. And obviously things like the Uni Connect hubs that the OFS obviously have launched, and following on from NCOP and stuff, that will really bed in there as well, I imagine. But again, one of the main things I would encourage colleagues to be, and I think they are, but other universities as well, just be open and honest with the sector. That said, with the Leicester hat on has been an approach and a positioning that we found really beneficial. Because I think, and I don't know, and I've not heard any teachers or advisors say this, but I think there was maybe some thoughts maybe at the start of kind of when the exams were cancelled and stuff around that. I think there was a thought that universities might know more than they were letting on about how the next steps, but actually it was a question of we were in exactly the same boat. And being on the front foot and saying that worked well. So as a sector, in terms of to sum up that, I think collaboratively all we can do is be open, be honest, listen to what's needed, and then reflect that with activities.
Brilliant. Well, listen, we've amazingly already hit the 20 minutes. Wow. So can I just close off by A, thanking you for your time, B, for sharing your views. This is part of a series of interviews we're doing. So I'm sure you'll probably listen with interest to what some of your other colleagues in the sector. So on that note, enjoy the afternoon, what's left of it, and thank you again for your time.
Thanks very much, and thanks for putting up with with my wife wandering in on the other occasion as well.